everyone. I am Susie Lyon with Hello Switzerland to talk today about property, everything you need to know in order to become a homeowner in Switzerland. So after a few years of living in Switzerland myself, my husband and I decided we would look for a property to buy. And when I started looking into buying a home in Switzerland, I found that the way it works here, it's quite different, and it was very different to what I was used to, and it was sometimes confusing. I worked out that it's important to get the right information so that when you purchase a property, you go in knowing what to expect right from the start. So in order for you to get that information right the first time, today we will be speaking to Antonio Carella from Money Park. Antonio has a wealth of knowledge when it comes to helping expats buy a home, so we are in good hands. So let's meet Antonio. Hi, Antonio.
Hi, Susie. Thank you for having me. So, two, three words to me maybe at the beginning. I'm a third generation here in Switzerland. My grandparents moved to Switzerland, so kind of an expat situation, going into a new country, not knowing how the process is, just having one security, the job. I've been passionate in financing and the whole financial situation of clients since very first day in my job life. So I started with 15 at a bank, just went over additional 8 years with this bank. And after that, I said, well, maybe it makes sense to join an insurance to see the other part of the financial market. After a short time, I joined Money Park, where I just can bring in my profound knowledge in every aspect of financings. And this is what brings me to this meeting as well.
Great, that's awesome. Nice to meet you, Antonio. And Money Park has a relationship with Helvetia, which is another partner that we've spoken to in the past with Hello Switzerland. Tell us about that relationship.
Yes, absolutely. So Helvetia, in the meantime, is our majority stakeholder. So we work closely now for over 3 to 4 years together. And this is where their expertise meets ours, where we just extend their excellent service in our sense, talking about mortgages and financing properties.
That's great. So let's get the main question out of the way first and foremost. If you're an expat living in Switzerland, you might be wondering, can me as an expat buy a property in Switzerland? So let's just start with that one. It's a simple one to answer.
Absolutely. So yes, you can. It obviously comes down to the residence permit you have, whether you get the letter B or C. Whereas with the letter B, you are allowed to buy a property only for your self-use, so your new home. Whereas with letter C, you will have the possibility to buy additional properties such as a holiday home or a property to rent out. So there you got more possibilities to do so.
So a good reason to go and get the C permit might be if you want to have more than just a property to live in.
Could be helpful.
Yeah. So the biggest part of getting your own home would probably be the mortgage part. So that's kind of the first thing that someone might wonder, can I get a mortgage for my home in Switzerland? So let's break down how a Swiss mortgage works and what one has to kind of think about when buying a home.
At the beginning, it's very important, obviously, to bring the own funds. So there is no property without down payment. Now, the question is more, how big does this down payment need to be? In Switzerland, it's 20% of down payment, which needs to come from the buyer. And we can bring up to 80% as a mortgage, just as general solutions. From the 20%, which is brought by the client or the buyer, there is a 10% minimum cash, which needs to be brought. That's hard savings, such as savings accounts or as well third pillar savings. And the rest can come out of pension fund savings. There is just a small rule in addition to bring at least the 10% cash.
Okay, and there are some other ways that you could bring in that money. It doesn't just have to be from savings or your pension. What are some of the other things that someone could use to make that 20% up?
Mhm. Absolutely. So there are obviously gifts and inheritances, so from families and friends which are or which have the possibility to assist in this situation. Obviously, securities can be brought in as a pledge as well as a security, insurance coverages from third pillar A, B, or as well pension funds. So there is a plenty of variety to bring in assets for the purchase. It's always important if it is self-saved or not. So the 10% still needs to be used from hard cash, savings, third pillar, or gifts and inheritance.
Wouldn't it be nice if we could all get gifts of 10% of the mortgage so that we could buy a home? So there's something that when I purchased a home here in Switzerland that was brand new information to me. I'm from Australia and I've owned property in Australia and in the UK, and this was not a thing there. And that is something that is known as first mortgage and second mortgage. So I now know what it means, but let's just assume I don't, and tell me what that means, so that we can have some sort of understanding on why would there be two mortgages and what a first mortgage is and what a second mortgage is.
Yeah. So we like to make it a bit complicated in Switzerland. So that's one of these things. So basically, the first mortgage is up to 66% of the purchase price, and this can be held lifelong. This is what at least it's determined to be. I will go back to that later on. And the difference to the 80% is the second mortgage. Now, you need to pay back during holding the property the 15% within the next 15 years. And that means that there is a so-called amortization to reduce the mortgage. And this needs to be done within the next 15 years. Generally, there are special rules within 10 years, depending on location, etc. But that's the general ruling. So it's not an interest-only mortgage in Switzerland, and we do not pay down to zero, maybe as around Switzerland. Me as an Italian, we have exactly the same situation in Italy as well. In Switzerland, the new zero is 66. And from then on, it really depends on your long-term affordability. So it's crucial to get into detail as well there to know if the mortgage is affordable as well over the retirement age, so that you just know to reduce to which amount and not just 66%. That's just book rulings, which at the beginning may be right, but it really comes down then to the long-term affordability.
So I think that that second mortgage that you have to pay over 15 years is where a lot of the confusion comes in for a lot of expats, because this is a story that I've heard myself before buying a property, and I've heard friends talk about, where they say, you know, I pay 3,000, 5,000 francs in rent, but I've heard if I have a mortgage, it's only 1,000 francs, and that's because of that second mortgage. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. And the importance there is more to know where this money is going to. So in a rent, the money is spent. This will never return into your pockets again. Whereas having the property and paying interest, this will go to the bank and will not return. You will have maintenance cost as you have as well as a rent, or someone being in rent. Whereas the amortization is kind of a linked savings plan towards the property, where you save money in a basket or in the property itself to reduce the mortgage. So at the end, you reduce your debts, whereas your own capital in the property is increasing, which is just kind of a linked savings plan.
Great. Okay, so I found this next part of getting a mortgage really confusing, and hopefully you can dispel any kind of myths or misinformation. So if I want to buy a property in, say, let's say the UK, I will go to the bank and I will say to them, what can I borrow from you? And they will give me a number. And they may even do something like a pre-authorization saying, you know, you can borrow X amount, and then I look for houses that match that amount. But when I went to the bank here to do that, they said, oh no, don't worry, just bring us the house that you want to buy or the apartment that you want to buy, and we'll tell you if you can afford it. So it was a little bit backwards. It seemed like I had to come to the bank with the information before they would say yes or no. I kind of worked it out in the end, like, oh, if they said yes to this property, then they will probably say yes to this property. But this is about kind of like a test to see if you can afford the mortgage. Tell us a little bit about this kind of affordability test.
Yes, sure. It's quite complex as well. It's math in the background, so there are some bits which needs to be in there for sure. So there is a general ruling in Switzerland saying that as well, going for a rental property, that your rent should not exceed 1/3 of your net income. And it's exactly the same ruling as well when you buy a property, with the difference that there is no input data rent. So we need to generate this cost. And to do so, there are three important parts in it. On the first line, obviously, we got the interest, which is 5% of the mortgage. That's for security reasons. We just seen recently that there is an increase in that. So that's just to be sure and not to have too much mortgages out there which are not affordable. In addition to that, there is maintenance cost. So this is just for the current running of the property itself and maybe future renovations. So that's why it's always 1% of the purchase price, which will be added. And last but not least, the so-called amortization, which we have talked a bit earlier, this will be added to the calculation itself. So it will generate the total annual cost of this property, and this should not exceed 33% of your gross income. Now, the 33% is as well a school book thing. Obviously, every bank wants to have clients matching this 33%. Now, we as Money Park, we have more than one partner in our background, meaning that there are differences from bank to bank, which can vary from 33 up to, let's say, 38 to 39%.
Okay, so it does depend on where you go and what the bank will say is your affordability based on their own rules that they set out.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so let's talk about the pension. This is something that we did mention before when we talked about that. The 20%, 10% has to be hard cash, and then the other 10% can come from a variety of different places. This is where the pension comes in. So let's talk about how someone would use their pension to buy a home, because again, this is like the third part of buying a property that you go, what does that mean? How can I use my pension? But it is a thing, and you're here to tell us how it works.
Yeah, so it's going back into all rulings again. So you can use definitely the pension fund for a financing. Again, 10% minimum cash needs to be brought, which pension fund is not going under this rule. So if you bring the 10%, then you have still the possibility to use the pension fund. Now, if this is applied, you can whether withdraw the pension fund, take the cash out and use it for the purchase itself, or you get another option, which is the pledge of the pension fund. And this is a big difference, or can be a big difference, tax-wise, or as well in other aspects, just having money left in the pension fund as a security as well. So there we are keen to advise clients whether solution A or B is the better one, but it's definitely a choice to be made in that sense, where there are obviously things linked to A or B.
Yeah. Okay, so let's assume that I've found out all this information and I've gone out and I've looked at some properties and I've found one that I want to buy. What are the things that I need to consider? What are the costs that I'm going to have to think about when it comes to buying that property?
Mm-hmm. So obviously, apart from financing it, having the mortgage, apart from that, you will have running costs of the property itself. But before you will be handed over the property, you will have as well transactions at the local municipalities, where just signing the credit contract and getting the ownership of the property itself has as well a cost, and this varies from canton to canton in Switzerland. So there are 26 different rules in our country related to that. So it really comes down to the real estate agent you are talking to get these numbers right. So this can be between 1,000 to 5,000 Swiss francs, usually for the transaction itself, and this is linked to the purchase price. So it's increasing, obviously, the higher the purchase price. Once you finally have the property in your hands and the keys and everything, you will need to move in. So depending on your household, you do it on your own, you have a company assisting you in that sense. So this is as well a step to consider. And maybe you are able to buy a bigger place than now. So there are some rooms to be furnished as well. So there are plenty of costs which can come up during this time. But the most important one will be the maintenance cost then during the property hold, which can obviously as well vary from property to property, depending on the heating system, etc. But there are plenty of things to consider.
Yeah, and it's never just, oh, I've got my mortgage, now I can, not worry about it. As we've seen with this, energy crisis that we're going through, the price that things cost when you might move in, they can change. So you do have to consider, having that kind of budget for your maintenance costs and bills and all of that, which is normal. Everyone knows about their bills that they have to pay. We can't forget about them, unfortunately. So, Antonio, if someone wants to learn how to plan, save, and then buy a property, is there a service that you can recommend to us?
Yeah, so obviously through to our cooperation with Helvetia, they come quite handy with their expert team to assist clients in this process. So it is a service from Helvetia in cooperation with Money Park, where you will get insights to understand how to save towards the property. So which basket you need to fill, which one makes more sense to fill in order to have the required assets by the time being you want to buy. And obviously there are, as said, pension fund, third pillar, so there are many options to use. So you will get as well there quite a bit of information how to leverage these tools in the best way to be ready and bulletproof by then, so that you can just go through the process quite calm and relaxed because you're well prepared.
And who should anyone get in contact with if they are watching this and they decide, yep, definitely need to find out some more information?
Yeah, that's through Hello Switzerland and Helvetia, which is assisting in the background there in this exact process. And we are somewhere back there as well. So as soon as it's going through financings and tax implications of property holdings, then we will come in and assist Helvetia from our side.
Excellent. And I feel like that it's important for people to know that if they're watching this and they think, okay, so I kind of get what you meant about the two mortgages, but I'm still confused about the pension, there is someone that they can talk to about those things.
Absolutely. So we are happy to help wherever we can. And for us, it's daily business. So it's something we know almost by heart, and we understand fully that it is kind of confusing in our country. So that's why our cooperation with Helvetia comes in as well, in order to be there where the client's needs is.
Excellent. Definitely something I could have done with a few years ago had I known, because I had to work all this stuff out on my own, but I got there in the end. But your services would have been definitely helpful to me. But Antonio, it's been great to get some information from you, and definitely nice to get to know you as well. So this has been a webinar on property for Hello Switzerland. I am Susie Lyon, and Antonio, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.